everybody, and welcome back to Ancient Awakening with Castalia. I'm Castalia, and I'm going to be your guide through uncovering the spiritual implications of mythology and the lessons that our ancestors left for us to have at this time of collective ascension. Today we are diving into a Greek myth, as has been the usual, and it is the Ferryman of the soul. So if you watched last week's or 2 weeks ago's episode, you would have seen that we had ended the video with pulling from the cup to do the Ferryman of the soul. So I've taken the last 2 weeks to really dive into uncovering the deep myths of Charon, who is the Ferryman of the soul. And I'm going to share my findings with all of you today in this podcast episode. It's episode 20, so that's really exciting because I feel like it has evolved a lot and there's so much more to uncover in the future. So let's dive into the underworld and uncover what spiritual implications are in the myths of the ancient Greek underworld. Death has always been the great crossing, the moment when the physical world loosens its grip and the soul steps deeper into the truth. In ancient Greece, the passage was guided by a single figure, Charon, the ferryman of the underworld. His image has been twisted into something frightening, as most things that come from the underworld are, because humans, we are afraid of death. I'm going to put a little pause before I continue to say that I had a near-death experience in February, and I wasn't really aware that that's what was happening, but a year later the doctor said this is what was happening. My body was shutting down, going into diabetic ketoacidosis, and in that moment I wasn't really aware that I was close to death, and I wasn't fearing it as much, because when you have a strong spiritual basis, it's not as frightening. I was afraid to sleep. Initially, all I wanted to do was sleep instead of going to the hospital. That's all I wanted to do. And then I wouldn't have woken up, but by the grace of God, I was pushed to go and get help. And then after that, I was scared to sleep because I felt it. I felt something different, and that was scary. Not that I knew that it was like something to do with my body shutting down or what it was, but that initial feeling, the feeling, it is scary. The feeling of the unknown. What we are really afraid of is the unknown, because in that moment, when the diagnoses started coming, you have diabetes, you have this, you have that, I was more afraid of the unknown. And I realized in that moment, when, we're afraid of death, it is this unknown, because what happens after we die, that's what every myth is trying to explain. And I believe that, and we'll talk about it further in the episode, that Chiron being this ferryman, this person that you give your loved ones to, and you put the drachmas on the eyes, and it's something that it's something that can bring some sort of peace, some sort of control. So yeah, ancient people putting the coins on the eyes, or the tombs in ancient Egypt, something to give you control over it, because it is something that's out of your control. The unknown is out of your control. Learned this the hard way. Death is also out of your control. I mean, you're not going to die before you're supposed to. To have something where it's like, yeah, my body was completely shutting down and I could have, but I didn't. And actually everything that I was afraid of, that, everyone's saying, that's not going to kill you. Well, yeah, that was not, at the end of the day, that wasn't what it ended up being. Was, neglecting my health, which wasn't good. And we, as humans, we do neglect our spiritual health. And the difference is, I don't neglect my spiritual health as much as I have neglected my physical health at some points, of just power through the hunger, power through the exhaustion, just mind over matter. The whole thing is balancing the soul and the body. And in a lot of myths with the underworld, they're kind of treated like the body is with the soul still. In a sense, the identity is with the soul. The placings of where the soul goes within the underworld, where Chiron will take them to, is related to what they did as a physical person, which is true. But there is still a tethering of the identity. And there is a reason, as humans, we are so obsessed with immortality and creating godly archetypes, because we are afraid, the ego is afraid of losing the identity, and And then we're afraid of the unknown, so if we can control and just like stay alive, better the devil you know, right? Better like the world that you know than the world you don't know. This is also why we create these metaphors to explain things that we're scared to, like, if we say it as it is, it's a little bit more scary. And I can't handle sugarcoating. It's the whole point now is that the time for sugarcoating is done because we're not listening. So we gotta uncover it, of course. And this is why, in regards to like the reason we sugarcoat things is because we're afraid. We're afraid of hurting somebody, or there's an underlying fear. But under every fear, there is a truth. So and a spiritual teaching. There is a deeper truth hidden beneath, like, why are you feeling this fear? I didn't want to go to the hospital because I was afraid of pain. I could have had a painless sleep and not continued my life. Or feel a little pain and accept the pain and know that pain, it means you're alive, and that's part of being alive, and it's gonna happen, and we can't neglect or ignore things because of that fear. So we have to, in every sense, in every area, and that's something that is definitely present in the midst of Chiron, is to face those fears, overcome those fears, and not allow them to control us, and find the teachings that are in the fear. Like, what is it that you are really, what's the deeper root behind this, like, superficial fear? So in some people might see the Ferryman of the underworld as some, like, omen of death. Like, he's very much like, it's don't shoot the messenger, but then it's like, oh, well, he's gonna come and take you away. And not necessarily how that works. He's actually a guardian of transition, the one who receives the last remains of the physical world so that the soul can regain its true sight. And that's something that I also notice that as humans we're afraid of this, the third eyesight, the sight beyond this reality, to know and connect and be aware of. And it's like, people tell me, don't put it in your psyche, don't read about this, don't read about that, about the diagnosis, don't read about all the things that could go wrong, it's gonna go in your psyche, you don't need to see it, you don't need to be aware of it. No, what actually you need to do is to be aware of the unknown, because when you're aware of it, you can take better actions to prevent the negative and, find a more positive outcome. So it's important not to fear it. And that's the thing, when we face death head on, which is really what the myths of Charon are trying to teach, and it's also the myths of Hades and other ones, which I'll talk about in the future, and Cerberus, which I did as one of the first few episodes of this podcast, is that when you face it head on and you accept it, it's not as scary. Like, okay, once I accepted my diagnosis reality, that's not the scary part. And the scary part is then ending up how, going through the day-to-day and adapting to the change of routine, and I'm scared of needles and I don't want needles. This thing, like, more getting over another fear. And when you face this, then you're stronger, and everything is a lesson. Everything in life is a lesson. And every myth has a lesson within it that was already learned by those before us, that we can take it so we don't have to also doubly experience it, of course, as well. So I mentioned the coins, so to go back to my script, veering very off topic. The ancient practice of placing coins on the eyes of the dead was not a payment for safety. It was a ritual of surrender. This is how I interpret it. Now, yes, of course, it was a payment as well. But in a sense, it is also a surrender. It's like you're surrendering control. It's like, okay, the last thing that I can do is, know that my loved one has safe passage. Put the coins on the eyes, and that's the last bit of control that I can have. They're already gone. But it was more so for the people who lost a loved one. Yeah, there is also, in the practices of, like, put the coins on my eyes, make sure I have the safe passage, but it's also for us as ones who've lost a loved one to process the death of, like, knowing this is something that I can do, this is something that I can control. And a big thing, a big pattern I've noticed in the Greek mythology and in life and in culture is that we like to have control over things. We like to be in control in general. It's when things are out of our control, then it becomes scary, it becomes daunting, and we get overwhelmed. So in a sense, yes, it is a lot of things, that act of placing the coin. The eyes are symbols of physical perception. So this is a different metaphor that I tried to uncover. They were covered with the currency of the material realm. To cross into the spiritual world, the soul had to release its attachment to the physical identity, physical values, and physical seeing. Even though the way that they are placed is, based on the actions of what they did in their physical identity. But in general, you have to let it go. There is, obviously, because this is how we, perceive it, in then and now there was the perception of, we have this one life, we have this one identity, we have this one story, and this dictates our eternity. And that's not the case, but that is the perception of the time, and other cultures challenged this as well. I cannot find full evidence in Greek mythology that there was any sort of reincarnation story confirmed or anything like that. The only thing that I have found that could potentially be this case of them maybe explaining reincarnation would be how the Olympians take the roles from the Titans, and is it possible that it's like Kronos reincarnated as Zeus, or there is maybe something there. I will try and find it if I can. It might be a stretch, it might be more of like a theory than a metaphor, but maybe I can find it someday. It's very important when to fully let go. The thing that holds us and bonds us to the material world in such a way that can be heavy for the soul is our fear of letting go and losing the physical reality. I'm not a materialistic person. I would say I try to be as minimalistic as I possibly can. But I can also acknowledge that I'm living, and it's okay to live, and it's okay to have things. But yeah, I was not thinking of my things. I was thinking about people. And that's an important part of especially the ritual with putting the coins. It's your connection, your relationships with people, which I'll explain more as we go through the episode, is, I was thinking of my friends. I was thinking of my plans with them. I was thinking of my family. I was thinking of seeing my family. I was thinking of my connections. And in a hospital bed with tubes coming out of me, and I am thinking about people. I'm thinking about my people. I'm thinking about my connections, my relationships. That is what you think of, I would think. In my experience, that's what I was thinking of. I was holding, myself together and trying to also avoid going into the hospital and staying the night in the hospital, because I have my commitments to the people that I love. So, this whole thing is like, well, it's not just going to change my life, it's going to change everyone's around me's life, and I want to protect them. And there's a little bit of a people-pleasing thing there. But that's a side thing. And you're thinking about your connections. And when you let go of everything from the physical, you don't lose that. You don't lose the connections. You don't lose the love. You still have it. Because it's part of the soul when it's a deeper connection. And these things, they bond you. The near-death experiences, the pain, the suffering that you share, and you have the support team of friends and family, and it is our connections. And it is our connections that, offer us safe passage beyond. So, so back to my script that I am not following, to release the physical identity, physical value, and physical seeing, only then could Chiron guide the soul toward the truth of its own essence. Across cultures, this role belongs to sacred archetypes. In regards to the archangels, for example, that would be Archangel Azrael, the angel of transformation, transition, and peaceful passage, and also known as the angel of death, its transformation. In Greek myth, the same archetype appears in the form of Chiron. In Chiron, not in Hades. Hades is the ruler of the underworld. He is not the guardian or guide of the transition passage. He is just overseeing everything. The actual transition and entering into the underworld is Chiron. He is neutral, compassionate in his detachment, and devoted to the soul's safe arrival in the realm where its life can be understood. So we're going to explore Chiron not as a fear figure, but as a psychopomb, the soul guide, the mirror of the life we lived. We will explore the layers of the underworld, the myths that reveal his true nature, and the deeper message hidden beneath thousands of years of storytelling. That I didn't think about having to pronounce that word when I wrote it down. So last week we had the episode of The Peace by Aristophanes. That is what we did last week. Yeah. I'm like looking at the journal prompts. I'm like, how are these journal prompts that I had at the end of last week's episode related to last week's episode? But they are. I kind of, in a sense, so like we're answering them, but let's like review, because I like to review them before we fully go into Chiron's episode, even though I feel like we already started. So last week when we were talking about the birds, there is prompt 1 was, where in my life have I forgotten the original wisdom, the natural instinctive truth beneath learned beliefs? So this, I would say, would have been for me forgetting the knowing that the physical, the pain that we feel physically is temporary and a sign that we are alive, and it's not something that we need to be running away from all the time. And it's a learned belief that I observed from adults in my childhood to avoid and run away from pain. And if you don't process it, you're not gonna let it go. Number 2 is, what spiritual roles or identities have I inherited without questioning their origins? I'm gonna use that example as that one. How do I relate to the cycles of nature, and what do they teach me about my own cycle? So this is also, in a sense, related to Chiron, as the cycle of nature is the rebirth cycle. It's the seasons, it's the change of seasons. And I feel like my life follows the flow of the seasons. Like I have my winter period, I have my rebirth in the spring, I have my joyful summer, I have my releasing in the fall, which is how we operate. It is our life, our life is reflected in nature, and our experiences and spiritual story is reflected in the way that nature moves. And then, death and transformation, death not just like physically, but the death of the old, is part of that. It's an important part of life. Which archetypal bird do I feel most connected to right now? Now, I'm sure you don't remember all of that from episode 2 weeks ago, all the different birds, but it's just any bird. I would say, because I'm working to understand timing of things, the vulture, who is an archetype of also Chronos and devouring time, it would be that of learning to not be so controlling over time and making things perfect in time. Having a little bit of trusting the divine timing is an order, and that is also an order for accepting and processing and understanding death. And transformation. And lastly, from last week was, where am I being called to reclaim a role or power that I once gave away? I am being called to reclaim my confidence and independence in regards to living my life, because there was that period of time where I was very dependent on, every time I make a mistake, I have to go to the doctor, I have to do this, I have to do that, like in the hospital setting, and then gaining that independence again myself. When you regain that independence and you get back to your actual beliefs, your actual values, and your relationship with yourself physically and spiritually and mentally and emotionally, returning back to yourself can help you understand where you're rooted, where you have to find stability. It's all about finding stability. And when you're not so obsessive about the things that you can't control, like death, like the unknown, you can find better stability. So that being said, let's dive into the world below, where death is not a punishment, it's a reflection, and the ferryman is not your enemy, but your escort into higher truth. So, first, the spiritual implication of the coins, the eyes, and the surrender of the physical realm. In ancient Greece, the dead were buried with coins placed on their eyes or in their mouth, as Chiron's obol. This wasn't superstition, it was a ritual of profound symbolism. Now, more so in the eye than the mouth. It's not as commonly, I mean, the mouth was also an option, and in that sense it would be your the communication of the soul versus the communication of the physical. Sometimes we speak from only the physical perspective, and then to be able to really learn our soul's lessons, we have to speak from that perspective. We have to kind of close the physical mouth to be able to listen to our soul. So the eyes represent physical sight. Covering them symbolizes surrendering the limited perception of the physical world. The coin is the currency of the physical realm. To cross into the spiritual realm, the soul must relinquish its attachments to physical identity, physical seeing, and physical value, as mentioned in the little introduction. So Chiron reveals the last remnants of the physical, receives the last remnants of the physical, and helps reveal to the soul its true sight. He is not taking something from the soul, he is helping it shed what no longer serves it so it can reclaim its truth. So the first spiritual truth of the Ferryman, of the soul, is death is not a theft, it is an exchange. Next is Chiron's true role. The physocomp, not the Punisher. It looks like a very strange word to read, so give me some grace here. Physocomp, not the Punisher. Chiron is the child of Nyx and Erebus, night and darkness, primordial forces older than the Olympians. He's not a demon, not a judge, not a tormentor. He is neutral, ancient, wise, and a servant of cosmic order. His task is simple and sacred. Guide the soul to the place where its life can be evaluated. Judgment happens after the crossing. He is the escort, not the executioner. This is why he is feared, not because he is evil, but because humans fear transition and the unknown and judgment. And here's the thing, just don't do evil things and you have nothing to fear. Easier said than done, but also I feel like it's not. Like, I feel like we can just be kind, and instead of just like, oh, I'll deal with this later and make your future self's life more difficult, just deal with it in the moment, because I was avoiding things in January that made my now present self life a little bit more difficult because I was ignoring what my body was telling me, which was that it was in pain and I needed help. So we should not be just waiting for Judgment Day and then fearing it. You end up creating what you fear by choosing actions that would cause you to be afraid of something. So don't shoot the messenger, again. So the layers of the underworld was another thing. A mirror of the life you lived. So once the soul crosses, it enters the realm with multiple destinations. We have the realm for the virtuous, for the passive, for the wicked, and for the spiritually evolved. These layers reflect the soul's lives. So if you lived with goodness, you are rewarded. If you lived with cruelty, you face the consequences. If you lived passively, you drift passively. If you lived with purpose, you are guided with purpose. The underworld is a reflection of the life you lived. When you die, what you experience is a reflection of the life you lived. This is cosmic order. And what Chiron ends up doing is getting you to experience the cosmic order. He is part of that process. Without him, you wouldn't go. You wouldn't on your own, like the soul would not on its own go to be judged. You have to be taken there because there is that fear. But eventually, there's the karmic law, like there is karma. Eventually you will pay for your actions, whether positive or negative. So Chiron as the Greek archetype of Archangel Azrael. I have wanted to find archangel representations in the Greek mythology, maybe a way that shows that it could have been that the ancient Greeks were seeing the archangels and then putting a different name on them, or it's this like similar thing, or maybe they were presenting themselves a little bit differently at the time. So I wanted to find out if I can find this. This is a goal I want to have, because the archangels are very much real. So across cultures, the figure who guides souls through death is never the Punisher. They are the transition guardian, the escort, and the psychopomp. I'm not gonna get this word right, and I feel really bad because it's physocomp. I'm really bad for not getting it right. But there is a lot of negative stigmatization around the transition guardians, and then eventually when we allow fear to control us, we end up being afraid of them, like crows or messengers letting us know that some transition is happening, and then we associate them with being messengers of death, and then we're afraid of them. it's as we are creating in our mind something to be afraid of. So in Greek myth, the figure is Chiron, and for the angels, the figure is Archangel Azrael. So both of them share archetypal qualities of neutrality. Neither rewards nor punishes, simply guides. Compassionate detachment. They do not interfere with judgment. They escort the soul safely. Transformation. They oversee the moment when the soul sheds the physical and steps into the spiritual, or any moment of transformation in regards to Archangel Azrael. And boundary keeping. They protect the veil between the worlds. So there is the veil between the worlds. But Chiron will come in the mythology too, the veil between the physical reality and the underworld, and he will take the dead to the realm of the underworld. And then service to cosmic order. They ensure every soul reaches a place where its next stage unfolds. If Greek mythology had an angelic hierarchy, Chiron would be the archangel of death and transition, the one who ensures the soul is not lost, wandering, or trapped. He is the Azrael of the Hellenic world. And that being said, it is time for the mythical examples that showcase the spiritual implications and meaning of the Ferryman. So this is what I'm the most excited for. I have, how many? I have 5 myths. I narrowed it down to 5. So, firstly, the myth of the unburied dead, the unburied dead, the shore of wandering souls. In Greek tradition, souls who were never given proper burial rites could not cross the river. They gathered at the banks of the Styx, or a Charon, drifting in a liminal state, unable to move forward. But the deeper truth is this: Chiron is not refusing them out of cruelty. He's protecting the order of the cosmos. A soul without burial rites is a soul without closure, without the final act of love, honor, or remembrance that anchors its identity. The burial ritual is not for Chiron, it's for the soul. Spiritually, this teaches that your relationships shape your afterlife. If you lived with kindness, someone will honor you. Someone will care enough to pay for your safe passage. But if you're a miserable person, why are they going to pay for your safe passage? Why will they care? If you lived with cruelty, no one will prepare your passage. Chiron reflects the life you lived. He does not punish, he reveals. This shows him as the guardian of the soul's dignity. He will not ferry a soul that is not ready, not honored, or not anchored in love. So this does show that you need someone who would care about you enough to pay for your passage, right? Whether it's a family member or a friend or whoever, someone, a neighbor, someone who knows that you're a good person and will pay for your passage. And if you were not and no one cared enough to, then you have some lessons to learn as well. It's also, there is the difference there between that, and then there are those who have their passage paid for, and then on judgment they ended up not being that great of a person. And those could be people who were like pretending to be a good person but were really not, and had someone pay for their passage. Or there could be other ways you could get your passage paid for that is not necessarily rooted in love, but it is rooted in connections. And if you spend your life unconnected from people, then you're going to be untethered and you're going to be wandering lost. And so our connections shape our future after we die. So the next one is Hercules, forcing the crossing, the consequence of breaking cosmic law. When Hercules descended into the underworld during his 12 labors, he demanded that Chiron ferry him across while still alive. Chiron, bound by cosmic law, refused, but Hercules was a demigod of immense strength and forced his way onto the boat. For the first and only time, Chiron broke the rule of death, and he was punished by the gods. This myth reveals something profound. He is not the ruler of death. He is a servant of its order. He does not get to decide who crosses. He only guides those who are meant to. He is meant to protect the boundary between the worlds. His refusal was not personal. It was cosmic responsibility. Even gods must respect the laws of transition. Hercules' forceful crossing shows what happens when the natural order is violated. Chiron's punishment shows his devotion to the soul's proper journey. Not a tyrant, but a guardian of balance. And this is where I found that he had to be a guardian of balance. He could not have been bribed, he could not have been provoked. It was that Hercules force his way without Chiron's permission, and then, due to the fact that Chiron is supposed to be a guardian of cosmic order, was punished for not following it, even though it was the aggressiveness of Hercules, not so that Chiron allowed it necessarily. It is important to uphold that balance, and you cannot play fast and loose with the guardians of transition and transformation. We have to respect that order, and we should not violate it, because there is consequences that it was not necessarily on Hercules. He completed his labors, but maybe after, well, then he joined the Olympians and he had that. But in a more realistic perspective, if you do something that ends up causing harm to somebody else because you were being arrogant, you should technically be punished for it. But in Hercules' myth, he does not get punished for that. But probably there's a little bit of he's Zeus's son, and Zeus wouldn't do that perspective there. That's a different thing. But let's think of this, if it was anyone else, eventually when he died, then he would face judgment and see that he was trying to control the universe and being arrogant, and that would reflect negatively upon him and his journey. So Orpheus and the power of pure devotion is next. So when Orpheus descended into the underworld to retrieve Eurydice, he did not come with force or threats. He came with music so pure, so filled with grief and love, that even the stones wept. Chiron, who had never been moved by mortal emotion, paused. He listened. For the first time, he did of his own fruition allow a living man to cross willingly, not because of power, but because of love. So Hercules was being arrogant and an aggressive force. Chiron was not going to let that happen, and Hercules did not listen anyway. In this sense, Chiron is moved by love, which would then imply that, in a sense, archangels are also moved by love, and love is a very powerful force. It's a grounding force for the soul. He responds to the soul's frequency, Chiron. Love, devotion, and purity opens doors that force cannot, in contrast to Hercules. He recognizes spiritual truth, that Orpheus' music was the language of the soul. It was Orpheus' heart song, so his soul was deeply communicating. Hercules was not entering by, communication of the soul. He was going through the arrogance of the ego. That is why Chiron would not let him through. He is not rigid, he is aligned with divine resonance. He shares compassion in this myth. And that shows that he is not a cold figure. He is sensitive to the soul's deepest intentions. So he could sense the intentions. Of course, it's not a positive intention, because Hercules went down there to get Cerberus. And that's not a positive intention. You want to remove another guardian of transformation, who also represents manifestation of the human sphere of death as well. You want to remove that. Remove something that is sacred and important for the transition period from living to the life without a physical form. It's not a pure intention. So of course Chiron wasn't going to let it happen, but he sensed the pure intention of Orpheus. And Orpheus ended up having a fear, and then he looked back and he didn't trust, and that's a different lesson, and he learned something valuable lesson for his soul. Which, in a sense, sometimes the angels will allow some things to happen, even if it might not turn out the way we hoped, because it's an important lesson for our soul that can maybe ensure that we, have a more peaceful experience after we die. Number 4, Anis and the golden bow, recognizing spiritual readiness. So in the Aeneid, Aeneas seeks to enter the underworld to speak with his father. The Sibyl tells him he must first find the golden bow, a sacred token that only appears to those who are spiritually prepared. When Aeneas presents the bow to Charon, the ferryman immediately recognizes its power and steps aside. So in this sense, this is Chiron responding to something of cosmic order. And it also is a representation of someone who is spiritually prepared. So this means that Chiron knows that this person, the soul, is prepared for what's on the other side. So he honors divine permission. He does not block the path of cosmic order of those who are spiritually chosen. He is a guardian of alignment, not a gatekeeper of fear. The bog symbolizes inner readiness. Only those who have done the inner work can cross consciously. So this is also representation of the fact that when we are spiritually ready, we can, and through meditation and connection, we can communicate with Source, we can communicate with our angels and our spirit team, and we can communicate to those beyond the veil. That's kind of also what this would, in a sense, represent, is this fact that he, sorry, I lost my point on the page. It would reflect this path that we also have, is that we have the ability when we are spiritually chosen to communicate beyond the veil. This is a true spiritual truth. This is a metaphor shown, and that the guardians of transformation and change and also death in general, they will allow us to communicate with our angels, with our spirit team, with departed loved ones, if we are ready, if we can handle it. So in a sense, here then Chiron is kind of being a metaphorical representation of like guardians of the veil, who would protect the veil line. And when you prove that you are spiritually capable of handling, and you have your energy protected, and you're not going to, you're not doing things from the ego perspective, or to take advantage, or to be arrogant and kind of aggressive like Hercules, then they will allow you to connect. So, let's see. Let me get my page back. So, he recognizes the readiness, and he is the guardian of alignment, not a gatekeeper of punishment, so he allows Aeneas to go through. And then the lonely death. The lonely death is, he is not cruel. He is consistent. Okay, so keep losing my spot on the page. So the where did it go? Where did it go? It's very interesting that I have lost my spot in the page. Where is it? Okay, here we are. We are back. So Chiron's acceptance of the bog shows that he is attuned to spiritual authority. He ferries those who are meant to cross, whether in life or death. So it's not just being a guardian of death. This proves that he is a guardian of transformation. He is a protector of the veil line. He determines when we are ready to connect to the life after life. There we go. And sometimes when you get a little lost and deterred along the way, that's okay. It just is to take some time to really process and understand that fact, and gave me some time to really think about another metaphorical example that I did not realize when I was writing the script, which is that it clearly does show that the ancients believed that we were able to, when we were spiritually ready, to connect, even when we are not dead, to the dead. So there is that belief in communing and connecting to the dead and to the guardians of those transition periods. And it really does show that they perceived him as this guardian of cosmic order. So the lonely death. We talked about this. No one places coins, no one honors them, no one prepares their passage. Souls wander for hundreds of years. Again, Chiron's, this is not Chiron's punishment. So I wanted to go back to this because what it is that the coins symbolize love, remembrance, and connection, that someone cared enough to prepare your soul. A life lived in cruelty leads to an isolated death. Also, if you are openly cruel. Chiron will reject you, but not because Chiron rejects you, but because you rejected others. So if the soul is caught in this like limbo period, it's not because it's not because you were necessarily being punished, it's that you were in a prison of your own making. Is essentially what I was trying to uncover here, is that if you push everyone away, you arrive alone. If you do awful things that no one secured you safe passage, then like you're so awful that no one even tried, and then there are people who got safe passage who were also bad and you couldn't get it either. This is indicating that it's like this is the representation of the prison of your own making, of your own living hell, basically, because you did something in a sense worse than some other crimes. You were not able to connect with people enough to have the safe passage. And the whole thing is that we are supposed to try to connect, and there are a lot of people who are like, well, no one likes me and this and that, and there's a lot of self-pity there, and self-deprecation. The thing is, you have to try. I've had that perspective as well, and when you try and you understand why you feel that way, and you power through, and you try to be yourself, you will find people. But if you force yourself to live in isolation, then that's going to be what happens when you die. So again, the underworld reflects the life that you lived, and Chiron is just responsible for getting you to that judgment point. So, in conclusion, Chiron stands at the threshold of every transition. He asks us the same silent question: what are you willing to release so you can step into who you are becoming? He is a guide. He is a representation of the transition to a life beyond life. So some affirmations for the soul. I release what no longer serves me and trust the path unfolding before me. Every transition in my life is a sacred crossing guided by wisdom and protection. I walk with integrity, compassion, and purpose, shaping the destiny of my soul. I'm supported in every transformation, both seen and unseen. My soul knows the way, and I follow its guidance with courage and clarity. And finally, for the journal prompts to crossing your inner river that I will put in the description and post on the community tab: what coins, which are beliefs, identities, or attachments, am I still holding that prevent me from crossing into my next chapter? Where in my life am I resisting a transition that my soul is already preparing for? If Chiron were guiding me today, what truth about my life would he reflect back to me? Which relationships in my life feel like they support my soul's passage, and which ones leave me wandering the shoreline? What would it look like to live in a way that leads me towards my own version of the Elysium, the virtuous place, the Garden of Virtue in the underworld? A life aligned with purpose, goodness, and inner truth. So we'll reflect on those in 2 weeks and talk a little bit more about those then. So let's see what the fates decide for the episode in 2 weeks. I need to start refilling the cup here with more. What is it? The polarity. So the polarity, shown in Greek mythology, the negative and positive polarity, and how it influences and affects humanity. We will be talking about that in 2 weeks. Until next time, may you continue to find inspiration from our collective ancestors as you embark on the ascension journey that is life on Earth.